So, are you DTFF?
Once again, here's Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your host, Jake Trowbridge and Dustin Lunt.
It's just me dancing until Dustin goes live.
I know. What the hell? A little laggy on my end to start. I'm sorry, folks, but welcome back to DTFF. Happy Tuesday evening. Happy Scott Fishbowl week. If you made it to the big dance, hopefully your drafts are going well. We had the Madison live draft on Sunday, which was awesome. I have to shout out my co-host Jake here for doing the heavy lifting of organizing that and getting it done because it turned out fantastic. Both divisions showed up, filled. It seemed like, from my point of view, it seemed like everybody had a great time. So thank you, Jake, for doing all that hard work. That's much appreciated.
You, sir, are more than welcome. It was fun. The first one in Madison, hopefully the first of many. If you're a local listener / viewer, hopefully you can make it out to the next one if it's hosted in Madison again. Or if this is your first time hearing about Scott Fishbowl in general, by the way, I do encourage you to check out scottfishbowl.com. Get yourself signed up for next year. It's already opened up, so you can sign up for Scott Fishbowl 15 already, which will be taking place next year. So it's a lot of fun, and it's good. It's for a good cause. So, what could you not like about it, frankly?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we've got a good show as we're talking right before we got going here. Maybe not the best week considering everybody's drafting Scott Fishbowl to do a mock draft, but we are degenerates. We can do multiple drafts at once. Who cares? If we're not doing more than one draft, are you really drafting? Are you really living life to your fullest? No, you're not. So we're going to push ahead and do this anyway. This is our first mock draft for redraft of this season. We'll probably have at least one more before the season starts, probably a week or two before the regular season starts here, just to get that final mock draft for those teams or leagues that draft late, as our home league does. So yeah, there's never a bad time to do drafting. So we're going to forego, well, except for what are we drinking, Jake? I can't forget about that. So you provided this beer this evening. So what are we drinking?
Well, I went back to the Lakefront Brewery because I'll be honest, my entire fridge is currently filled with Lakefront Brewery and almost nothing else. And I'm not disappointed by it. But this is the River West Stein. It's an amber lager, one that I've had many, many times. And it never, ever disappoints me. It's that nice balance. It's not super malty. It's just got a little bit of Christmas to it. That's what I like. That's why I like my ambers. How do you like this one?
I like this one a lot. I will drink this one fairly often out at the bars if there's nothing else I really see. This is one that I immediately turn to. I enjoy this beer a lot. So it's a very good choice. Thank you, Jake.
I am very happy that you enjoy it. Hello to Dave in the chat. Hello to Scampers in the chat. Appreciate both of you joining. If you two fine studs do want to join our mock draft, which will be happening here in just a couple of minutes, there's still time for you. Hop on in. The link is up, posted on socials, so feel free to jump in the line. Rock your body in time.
That's right.
Okay, I believe you, and etc. You know how the rest of the song goes, right? That's basically what we're doing for this. In any case, is there anything that you want to say before we jump into the mock itself and get this thing going?
No, I know I misled our listeners when I said we were going to be bringing back the drunk trade of the week as soon as we were done with the divisional series. That we're going to wait one more week just because these mock drafts do take some time, and we do want to be able to get through as many rounds as possible. I believe we're shooting for 10. I think is the good word. Or no, it looks like you have 12 this week, Jake. So we'll be doing 12 rounds. We want to try to get through them all and be able to analyze the drafts a little bit. So we're going to forego all this other chit chat and just get right into it.
All the chit chat. Who has time? Who has time for such a thing? Not us. I will run down the settings here real quick for this particular mock draft. This will be redraft focused. It's going to be a 12-teamer. As we discussed, 12 total rounds here. Pretty basic setup in terms of roster construction. It is full PPR. We're going to do 60-second timers. Why? Because I've decided, and because there's only like 5 of us really in the draft at this moment side of the computer pick.
So it'll go fast.
This will go fast. So we'll give ourselves some breathing room there. But otherwise, it's going to be pretty standard. Oh, look at Scampers jumping into the fold. I love to see it. We've got technically 6. We're half full, and you know what? That's a glass half full outlook to this mock draft. So let me share my screen and keep the positivity going here. Dustin, this is our first redraft mock of the year, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Say to people who say that it's too early for us to do this. What do you say?
I don't think. I say you haven't lived life to the fullest. No, it's never too early. I think this is the time of year to get an idea about where ADP is, and you can get an idea of where some maybe players you're going to be targeting or avoiding are falling in drafts, especially right before training camps start, because those are going to be starting up here within the next couple weeks. Then ADPs are going to start shifting or solidify even more than they already have. So I think doing one this early could give you just a little bit of inside track of how things could fall come your draft in August, basically.
I like it. I like it a lot. For some reason, it's not letting me share this screen. Hold on. Let me pull up a separate screen here. It's being a real Wang Chung about it right now. Yeah, I do say ADPs are going to be a little strange for this particular one. I don't really mind that. There was one that I almost wanted us to do, Dustin, I'll be honest. I wanted us to do the thing where it doesn't give you ADP at all and it just lists alphabetically. Ultimately, I thought that was a little too much.
No, that would be way too much. Oh my God. Ugh.
So you're not interested in that?
I would have the worst looking. No, I would have the worst looking team if we had to do that. So,
all right, that's fine. Well, we won't do that this time. I still think that would be fun at some point. I don't know. Maybe we'll put a pin in it for the future. Maybe not. Maybe we won't do it at all. But I think it would be interesting at the very least. All right, so I'm going to officially start this damn thing. So we can get moving and grooving.
You randomize this bad boy, and I happen to get the first pick of the draft. And this is pretty easy for me. Taking CMC.
I love it. Yeah, I don't think that there's
not much to question there.
Yeah, that's a pretty simple and lovely one. Now, I would say, this is where it's going to get interesting, because with these computer options, these auto drafters in here, I do think it's going to go a little bit differently. CMC, an obvious choice at first pick. I will say there's probably 3 that people will be deciding between. Tell me if you think I'm crazy, but CMC, the next one that was drafted was by Scampers here, which was CeeDee Lamb, who I think is also in contention for number 1. And there's one other guy who hasn't been drafted so far, and we are now through 5 picks, that I think could be in contention for the number 1 spot. And his name is Tyreek Hill. So I'll be curious to see where he goes. Do any of those seem outside of bounds in terms of being the number 1 overall?
No, absolutely not.
All right. Fair enough. I'm going to turn off the sounds on Sleeper for that, because that is getting a little bit obnoxious. All right, I'm sitting here now. So it was CMC, then CeeDee Lamb, but Bijan Robinson at 3 I thought was pretty interesting. That was higher than I've seen him go. Then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, Breece Hall, my dude. I'm bummed. Tyreek Hill all the way down to the 7th spot. That's the furthest I've seen him slip.
That is a
And then
steal.
then we had Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown. That feels a little bit like a snipe for me. And now I'm sitting in a pretty uncomfortable position. There's a couple of guys that I like but don't love. I'd almost rather have the 12 spot, I think, at this point and see who falls to me. But as it is, I'm going to get crazy here. Let's take Jonathan Taylor at the 10 spots. I'm trying to will myself into believing in Jonathan Taylor even more. Yeah, what do you think about that one?
I mean, as we talked about on our show a few weeks ago, talking with the AFC South, JT, he has a chance of possibly being a number 1 overall running back this year. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibilities for him. So if that were to actually happen, I mean, you got a hell of a steal there at the 10th pick.
Yeah, I go back and forth with it. I don't know if he has the number 1 overall possibility or not, because I worry about how much his quarterback is going to. We don't know if he's going to be more like Jalen Hurts or more like Lamar Jackson. Like, how many touchdowns will he snipe? That's what I'm most curious about. If he's like Lamar that way, then great. I feel like I got myself an absolute steal, but I just don't know. All right. I got to make my second pick here, and I still don't love this position. I got to be honest. I kind of hate it. Oh, I kind of hate it. Let's just go running back heavy and see what happens. I'm going to take Saquon Barkley as my number 2 pick, and I'll probably end up punting running backs the rest of the way here. So we both started off with at least one running back. We'll see when it gets back to you what you end up doing for the 2-1. Do you have any general strategy already where you go, if I'm taking CMC, I'm just going to avoid running back, or have you thought about it that way?
It depends who falls to me. Yeah, it really does depend who falls, because I typically, especially with our home league and just how that's set up, I typically in redraft like to go double running back and go real RB heavy. Only because in our home league, we have to start 2 running backs every week. It's not start 1 running back and then, a bunch of flexes. So really, I do like to have 2 running backs in that situation. But again, it just kind of depends on how things fall here. I know I got the turn, and I'm going to have a real interesting decision here. If I so choose to go tight end early, even though this is not a tight end premium, do I still take that advantage of getting one of the top tight ends and then just not have to worry about it the rest of the way?
And we're sitting here now at your pick, and there has not been a tight end drafted yet. And so you're going back to back. You could be the person to take the very first tight end. This is the first time I've been in a mock where, to this point, no tight ends have gone off the board. So yeah, you do have a.
But again, it's not premium, so that doesn't
right.
That doesn't surprise me. But it does make for an interesting decision.
And this is a little bit reflective of our home league stats, because you do have to start 2 in this format: 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a quarterback, a tight end, and then 2 flex spots, and then a few bench spots to go along with it. We're not doing kickers or defense.
I am going to take a tight end here. I went Achane, my boy, and then Laporta at the turn, just to see how this draft falls now that I'm not going to be taking a wide receiver till the end of the 4th, most likely, or quarterback if value falls there. So I just want to see how this looks. And this is why you do mock drafts, folks. It's so you can play around, do different things, try different drafts, different strategies, and see how it turns out, what you like and what you don't like.
I like it because that style is very different from what I'm used to doing as well. So I'm very curious to see how it plays out for you. I don't know if I will attack it quite the same way or not. I'm on the clock. You took Laporta as the very first tight end. Travis Kelce did go just a few picks after him. That seems about right. for the way that things are shaping up this offseason.
And while you're making your pick here, I will give a rundown of what this third round has been so far. So right after my Sam Laporte, it was Derrick Henry, Debo, Kelsey, Pacheco, Waddle, Jacobs, Stephon Diggs, and Michael Pittman. And back to you here, Jake. So fairly running back and wide receiver heavy early, which is not to be unexpected.
Yeah. God, I really hate the 10 spot. I absolutely hate it so far. There's not been a time that I've been on the clock and feel
but again, this is
comfortable
why
with
you
anything
do
I'm
it.
doing. Yeah. We're gonna go ahead and lock in. Old man Evans, not getting him at nearly the value.
I hope you get the 10 spot in our home league.
Just so you can watch me melt. Well, hopefully this will prepare me for the whole what time. Not just to be do. Like potentially on the day if I do end up with it. Yeah, at the end of this, we'll go in deep, obviously, to the picks that happened in more depth than what we're doing right now. Kind of analyze team by team, see what we like and what we don't like. But just initial thoughts.
Scampers in the chat here, he says starting 2 wide receivers versus 3 makes a difference. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely does. It's not as vital. And yet there has been, a ton of wide receivers coming off the board already. It certainly hasn't limited that. I'm sitting here again, not feeling great about any of the selections in front of me. It feels like everything at this point is kind of a reach, frankly. And I don't like that feeling. I don't like that feeling one bit, but I will try to mirror a little bit of what you've done thus far. And I'm actually going to take my tight end here as well before things get too crazy. Nice. I'm going to take Mark Andrews, my 4th pick. I still think Mark Andrews should be in the top 5 conversation pretty comfortably in that tier. Absolutely. And then after that tier, it does get weird. There's a lot of upside guys at tight end, but there's not a lot of proven tight end assets necessarily. So it does feel good to have it locked up.
Yep. And then a little mini run there after your pick, Jake, of quarterbacks. We had CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes in that order. Thoughts about Mahomes going as the 5th quarterback off the board?
It both makes sense, but also I think if we looked at it at this point last year, we would have been like, what the fuck? Like I don't think we would shut up about it for 3 minutes if this happened at this point last year, because he had one down season. He finishes as QB 12 in points per game last year. Obviously not what you draft Patrick Mahomes to do, but every great quarterback is allowed one off season, and I don't have any worries about him this year. But I mean, there are some guys who have much more rushing potential that, mitigate some of the risks. So a guy like Lamar Jackson, I would rather have over Patrick Mahomes. Now, CJ Stroud, who went ahead of him, that's where I think we should be focused on, because I think the hype is getting absolutely out of control for CJ Stroud. I love CJ Stroud, but my goodness, I would never take him in the top 3. So that's the thing that stood out. And that was an auto-drafted team who did that, to be fair.
Yeah. So to round out then the 4th round, we had DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith, Tank Dell, Rashad White, Cooper Kupp, and then I took George Pickens with the last pick in the 4th round. And this is where things are getting interesting for me with all those wide receivers going. My number 1 wide receiver is George Pickens, and number 2 is T. Higgins. Not the ideal start for wide receivers, but we'll see how it plays out. Still got to stay open.
See, I love George Pickens too, and it still felt, I thought about taking Pickens where I took Andrews, and I was like, am I reaching? It feels like I'm reaching taking him there. I don't know if that's actually true or not. God, I do love George Pickens. It just feels like whatever value we were getting on him has pretty much disappeared. Stinks
for sure.
Stop listening to our podcast. I'm sure that's what's cranking him up there. All right. So I could sit here and see if I want to grab one of these quarterbacks. I am pretty tempted to, I'm not going to lie. And I normally, me, I don't like to grab quarterback early, but this year I have so much confidence in this guy. He'll probably end up being a drinking buddy. So why not go ahead and add him to the roster? I will grab Kyler Murray, one of those guys I was talking about with the immense rushing upside that I feel like should be valued higher than he is. I probably took him too early. I mean, if I'm being for at least a round too early, I probably took him because I am now sitting here one pick away from the turn. Joe Burrow is a quarterback who went between my turn in there. I would still much rather have Kyler Murray over Joe, I do have to say. And it's not because of the injury with Joe Burrow. It's just the rushing
I
upside.
agree.
Can't get over it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So good. So
yep.
good.
I'm right there with you, Jake.
Yay. We're doing it. All right. I'm going to take this guy who's probably just overlooked still a lot in drafts, and I think will be overlooked right up until the season starts. I don't think this is a guy whose value is going to flux that much, and that's David Montgomery. David Montgomery is looked as the boring asset in the backfield of Detroit, whereas, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs, who went, by the way, at pick 111, is obviously the flashy guy, the more exciting guy. But I still think we have an Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram type of situation from those days with the Saints, where Dave Montgomery is not going to be sexy, but he's going to be very fantasy relevant. And then after that, Keenan Allen goes, and then James Conner, Rome Odunze. So Keenan Allen and Odunze, that's interesting that they're literally just 2 picks apart. Then Ramondre Stevenson, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, and DeAndre Swift. A whole lot of Chicago going in this round. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, with Nia Packer to be drafted. Yeah,
that's right.
But that's going to change here quickly, just because of how I started. I am hammering the wide receivers. So there, took Rashee Rice and Jaden Reed. I have a feeling by the time drafts really kick into full gear for redraft this year, we're going to have an answer about Rashee Rice and if he's suspended and for how long. So I think getting him at the end of the 6th, early 7th, those days are going to be long behind us by that point, and he's probably going to be a 4th round pick, 3rd round pick. I mean, he's going to jump up quite a bit if it's like a 2-game suspension.
Yeah.
But I figured as my 3rd wide receiver, I'll take the chance on him, thinking, okay, his suspension's not going to be all season. When he comes back, he's going to be involved in that offense. So why not take a chance?
Yeah.
Because at this point, I got to get all upside wide receivers just because all the studs, quote unquote, have been taken off the board already.
You ain't lying, my friend, but there is one stud, in my opinion, that's left on the board. And I don't really hate to do this to you. I just say it to be nice, but I hate to do this. I will be taking Deontay Johnson here, by the way, at 7-10. Just no way I'm leaving him there. Can't do it.
I do.
I ruined your day. I ruined Scamper's day. Scampers didn't like the David Montgomery pick. I know you didn't like the Deontay Johnson pick. Let me see how many lives I can ruin in this mock draft. But I do just love me some Deontay. Now, again, in the 7th round.
That was a good call.
Thank you. He also seems like somebody who will remain stagnant for the most part. I don't think we have to worry about his ADP jumping too much. Do you think it will?
I don't think so either, unless for some reason in the preseason we see him and Bryce Young really have a good connection. He scores a couple touchdowns or something. Then maybe I could see him jumping up like a round or 2, but he's not going to get up into that elite tier, even wide receiver 2 tier. I don't see him jumping up that far. He's going to be pretty late in drafts here, which I love because I got to try to snag him everywhere I can. And I wish I would have thought of him when I was looking at these ADP. I just didn't scroll far enough. But he is a guy I probably would have taken.
Could you imagine if we did do this alphabetically once again, how frantic we would have been in every phase of this? We'd need like 5-minute clocks if we're going to do alphabetical.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, one move I did here, which I don't think I would ever really do in an actual draft, is pairing a wide receiver and running back from the same team this deep down. I did grab Jonathan Brooks as my now 4th running back. So my flex spots will be dominated by the running back position at this point. But Jonathan Brooks, just in terms of pure volume, the only 2 pieces I want out of Carolina are Deontay Johnson and Jonathan Brooks. So I figure, let me just take all of the volume, hopefully, from that team in back-to-back picks.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I don't necessarily hate that, Jake.
Hey, not necessarily hate. That's the most glowing review I could hope to get from that. After Jonathan Brooks, by the way, Javonte Williams, Zach Moss, Ladd McConkey, rookie out of the Chargers camp. Jordan Love gets some respect there. Brian Robinson, Nick Chubb going at 809. Oh, I just don't know how I feel about that. Then DeAndre Hopkins, Jalen Warren, and that takes us to your picks here.
Yeah, and I took Austin Eckler, figuring I need to lay off wide receiver here, get a 3rd running back on my squad. Austin Eckler, we don't know what his role is going to be, but most likely he's going to be involved in the passing game, and that's what we want. Pass catcher plus, as Zach Reed likes to say. And then I decided to take Brock Purdy and pair him up with CMC just to get that double dip there on those receptions.
I like it. I respect that Austin Eckler pick. Again, just even as a pure pass catching back, if that's what he ends up being, I think that he's going to see a ton of volume in that offense. So I don't
and when you start looking at some of the other guys going around him, it's like he has by far, I feel like, the most upside of any of these remaining running backs.
Save for like 2, which I wouldn't be drafting there yet, though. They are late round running backs for me. I've already talked enough about them at this point. I'm not going to belabor it, but there's a couple of rookie running backs that I do really like. I'm not drafting probably any more running backs at this point, though.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I there's a bunch of rookie running backs I love as well that'd be taking later if we want the full 16 rounds. But as far as for sure, you're guaranteed Austin Eckler's. I should say nothing's guaranteed, but most likely what his role is going to be in this offense at a minimum. Yeah, so I feel very comfortable with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. So Gus Edwards went. He's not the Charger in the backfield that I want, but I do like the Chargers backfield. Then David Njoku, JSN, Christian Watson's the guy who I was going to just draft at my last pick instead of Jonathan Brooks, but I honestly just wanted to see how far he will actually fall. So he scooped up by Bruce Wayne in the chat, by the way, at 905. I do love that value. That's almost 2.5 rounds after Jaden Reed. What do you think about the discrepancy between those two right now?
I think it's warranted right now just because Christian Watson has not been able to stay healthy. So but supposedly that's going to change this year. New strength and training coach for the Packers. He's been working on his hamstrings. He could be one of the biggest steals in drafts this year if he ends up staying healthy, because when he's on the field, he's electric, but the problem is he isn't on the field enough. So if, like I said, he could be we could be talking about him come December or middle of the season saying like, this guy, steal of the draft. Why were we sleeping on him?
Yeah. Yeah. As of right now, there are 2 that I want to draft. And because again, Jaden Reed at 701, it's fine. It's fine to me. It's still not preferable to me. But if, like you say, if he goes up into the round 4 area, I'm just going to be out on Jaden Reed, especially if Christian Watson doesn't follow suit and bump up much at all.
Absolutely.
If Christian Watson ends up getting close to the 7th round, but Jaden Reed's in the 4th round, I know who I'm going to be taking there. There's one other Packer receiver that I will also be interested in taking, which hopefully will fall to me, but I certainly can't guarantee that as we are wrapping up round 10 here. And you are 1 pick away, but some of the interesting names, look, I'll be honest, the 2 last picks that I made, I don't love. I like Curtis Samuel a lot. I think he has the opportunity to be like the 1B in Buffalo's offense. I don't think he'll be the 1A, but he could be the 1B there. Then Cortland Sutton at 10:03. I'll be honest, I just kind of panicked. I saw red. I didn't like anything that was in the list for me, and I panicked on Cortland Sutton with Bo Nix there. I don't know. He has no ceiling. I already hate the pick. I gotta say, it's brutal. And then after that, Tua Tagovailoa, Dalton Schultz, Trey Benson, rookie out of Arizona, Blake Corum, rookie for the Rams. A lot of rookie running backs going here. Then Justin Herbert, Jameson Williams, Jaden Daniels, who it's nice to see again just where his ADP is, because I'm clocking that for future reference. And then Jerome Ford, and that takes us back to your turn picks.
Yep. Yeah, I took Adonai Mitchell. Just needed another wide receiver. Hopefully he can come on later in the season, get a good rhythm with Anthony Richardson. And then I took Kendre Miller. I really wanted to take Jalen Wright there, but since I already invested in the Miami backfield so early in Achane, I didn't want to double up in the backfield. Maybe that'd be coming back to bite me, just because this backfield could be so explosive, but I just wasn't comfortable doing it this time around. And then I have a feeling that Scampers sniped you there right after my pick, Jake, is who you were going to be looking for. Yep, he's the guy I've been coming out a lot of best balls with too, because he's so late, and I love Wicks as well.
This is why I should never say the things out loud that I'm thinking to a group of people who are both listening and participating in the thing that I'm trying to get done. Brutal stuff, Scampers. That's payback for the David Montgomery pick. I'm gonna guess. All right, I'm gonna go with Rashid Shaheed. Certainly no Dontavian Wicks. I do think Shaheed has a decent chance of being, the number 2 guy there in New Orleans, at least. I don't know. I don't know what that means. In Scott Fishbowl, at least he's going to get a bunch of return yards. That's not going to count for this, though. So I don't know. It's not. I don't like my draft. I don't like my draft at all.
Well, we'll have plenty of time here to dissect it before we log off this evening.
Oh God, this is so.
I don't know
brutal.
if that's fortunate or unfortunate for you.
I think it's bad. It's bad. Nobody that I like is here. Where are all the good names in the list? Where did they go? Have they been drafted? Is that the deal? I think that they have been. All right. We're going to do this just so I have somebody to talk about, because I am really interested in getting some thoughts on this guy. I took Jermaine Burton, rookie for the Cincinnati Bengals, at my last pick, 1203. I do think people have been asking a lot this offseason, hey, who's the next Puka Nacua? There isn't one, I think is the answer. However, if you're just looking at a rookie wide receiver that could sort of be an unknown that will at least be fantasy relevant, I do think Jermaine Burton is probably that guy. We've seen Cincinnati support 3 wide receivers enough. Not saying that Tyler Boyd was ever your savior for fantasy football, but he was definitely a useful guy. I do think Jermaine Burton is a little bit more versatile than what Tyler Boyd even was. And with T. Higgins, look, I know you drafted him, but you never know with the injury stuff and the contract stuff and everything else that's happening. I don't know. There's an opportunity there for Burton.
Oh, absolutely there is.
All right. And then after that,
when you're hitting the 12th round, when you're hitting this point in the draft, it's the 12th round. This is where you can really just start getting your guys and just start throwing ADP out the window. It doesn't really matter at this point. Just get your guys that you have conviction in, that feel like can be game changers or week to week, good flex plays, someone that's going to pop maybe later in the season to help with that playoff push. This is where you start making those picks.
That's right. God damn it, Scampers. We're trying to run a professional above board mock draft. And what do you do with your Mr. Irrelevant pick? Tanner Mordecai. I think he just wanted to give us props as a Wisconsin Badger. I think he wanted to throw that into the fold. That's what I'm going to choose to believe. That is the last pick there. Outside of yours, who is the true Mr. Irrelevant of this draft?
Mr. Jahan Dotson is my last pick of this draft.
Feeling good about it? You feeling ambivalent about it? What do you think?
I feel ambivalent about it. My draft overall, I don't think I would go running back, tight end. In my real home league draft, I don't like how my wide receiver core turned out. We got Pickens, Higgins, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, Adonai Mitchell, Jahan Dotson. Lots of upside there. I mean, if they all end up hitting, it's going to be a smash. Like, you'll probably win the league, just because you have what is going to be a top 3 tight end. You have 2 top 12 running backs, maybe the number 1 overall running back. So I feel like if those guys actually hit, my team could be really damn good, but there's a lot of question marks there with the wide receiver core.
But do you want to talk about wide receiver question marks? And by the way, I want to analyze everybody who is a live participant here. I do want to go through other teams. We certainly have time for it. Thank you to everybody who did participate in this draft. By the way, I know there were several of you in here that are even in the chat. I'm looking at you, 6 Spot, by the way. But wide receiver question marks. Look, I got weird with running backs. I did too many of them too early just to test the waters. And now I know for sure I don't like this. So Mike Evans in the 3rd round, I do like. I like that. Deontay Johnson in the 7th, I absolutely love that. Then, again, Curtis Samuel, I'm totally fine with as my wide receiver 3 if I feel real confident in my top 2 guys. And I guess I do. After that, it just falls apart a little for me. Cortland Sutton, again, panic draft pick. Rashid Shaheed, he's interesting. He's, I think, a better best ball type of guy than a redraft type of guy, though. And then Jermaine Burton, again, as I said, has some upside. So just a lot of hope there. But yeah, I don't think I would ever smash 4 running backs as early as I did in this draft, in a real draft, because there's just too much depth later on. I did like the confidence of locking up a tight end early, though. So, Mark Andrews in the 4th, I can get on board with that. And I think it's something that I need to do myself because I need to stop messing around with these late round tight ends. So, yeah, I feel okay with that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at wide receivers that were available right after my pick in the 2nd, being right at the end of the 2nd. Yeah. Going with Debo, Jalen Waddle, even Stephon Diggs. I mean, any 3 of those I would have felt better about. But then do I take Devon Achane at the turn then, or Laporta? It's one of those. How does the rest of the draft play out at that point? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. I
like your version better than those alternative worlds that you're constructing for yourself. I like the Achane Laporta combo better than those guys that you rattled off. Achane, hey, you might only get 8 healthy games of them, but holy hell, they're going to be phenomenal 8 games from Achane. And Laporta, again, he's going as the number 1 tight end for a reason. And you didn't have to. You could have hypothetically taken him in the 2nd round just so you could keep with his ADP, but it feels better to get him in the 3rd,
That's right.
Let's move over to the guy who is both sniping you and you sniping him probably with Scampers. Much more of how I would typically construct my draft. Went wide receiver heavy out of the gate with CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins. Then my guy, Derrick Henry. It's almost like he's just taking my soul little by little here. Cooper Kupp in the 4th, I think respectable at the end of the 4th. And then Anthony Richardson in the 5th. I'm not going to lie. If he was still there when I drafted later in the 5th, I would have taken him as well. Then Evan Ingram, Chris Godwin. And then a bevy of running backs. Just hit it hard just to see if you can get the right volume guy with Jaylen Warren, Gus Edwards, Jerome Ford, and then Dontavian Wicks. It does feel like he kind of stole my essence. I'm not going to lie, just a little bit. Kind of feels like he stole my essence just a little bit. So I do love that. Anything that stuck out about that one?
Yeah, I love the start. getting Derrick Henry in the third, that could be one of the bigger steals of draft season too, if he stays that depressed. He is definitely a low key, I hate to say sleeper, but he's definitely under the radar this year. The running backs later, I would have taken some other running backs ahead of those guys. Personally, I mean, I don't hate them necessarily, but I would have drafted a couple different guys just because of my personal preference. But overall, I really like Scamper's team here. I think he's built and probably one of the more competitive teams, I would say. I love Chris Godwin in the 7th. Just feels like downright just stealing candy from a baby at that point. Like, there's no reason Godwin should be going that late.
That's true. Well, our next non-auto draft.
Well, I think Jake froze up on us again, so I can go through the number 6 non-draft team with Jamar Chase, Etienne, Pacheco, Devonta Smith, Kincaid, Christian Kirk, Najee, Brian Robinson, Christian Watson, Herbert and Lawrence, and then Ben Sinnott. Jake, how do you feel about that number 5 team?
Like it so much that I had to go dark for a minute just to compose myself. No, I love the construct of this one as well. The one question mark I think a lot of people are going to have is at the tight end thing of, look, if Dalton Kincaid lives up to Dalton Kincaid's potential that we talked about coming into his rookie season, this is going to be a smash. Getting him, I would say him and Kyle Pitts, who went back-to-back in that round, are kind of the two mystery boxes at tight end right now. So if they both hit, getting them in those areas is going to really pay off. I mean, massively.
Yep.
We'll all look like fools for drafting tight end so early. But as it stands, the Etienne and Pacheco back-to-back picks, it's that safe combination where the volume is practically guaranteed for both of those guys. 250 touches this year. It's pretty much a lock. So I love that. Devonta Smith in the 4th. I've fallen a little bit out of love with Devonta Smith just because I'm tired of trying to pick the exact right week because A.J. Brown is the guy now. But in the 4th, I'm fine with it. Christian Kirk, I'm really going to have to do a deep dive, a meditative exercise on Christian Kirk to see where I fall. I know we have a beer bet about him. Whether he'll hit 750 yards or not, you're more confident than I am. Christian Watson, though. I love the Christian Watson pick in the 9th, no doubt. Now, the quarterback thing, I will say, as much as I dislike Justin Herbert, if you're going to draft him, I respect the hell out of this method of going right back to Trevor Lawrence in the next round. Trevor Lawrence, I don't know if he'll continue to be available that late, but the fact that he was, if Justin Herbert really does throw 5 times a game because Harbaugh is just that kind of a crazy son of a bitch, then you can pivot right to Trevor. So I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, then the next team at number 6 was another one of our live drafters here. We had Breece Hall, Olave, Waddle, Metcalf, Pitts, Stevenson, Zamir White, Jordan Love, Keon Coleman, Blake Corum, Xavier Legette, and Ricky Pearsall. I love this might be one of my more favorite teams. I'm not gonna lie. I really love the end 4 picks here, getting these rookies late that we know most rookies take some time to come on. They usually come on the second half of the season. So the fact that you got these 4 rookies here, and chances are they're going to be more heavily involved as the season goes on, it's just going to give you better and more lineup options come the second half of the season. So I kind of like that strategy, and it makes her a really interesting team.
Yeah, let me say, I don't like any of the individual picks, but I like the strategy of those picks. To your point, like, do I like Keon Coleman in and of himself? Not really. Hypothetically, though, he could be the guy there. So it could be him as opposed to Khalil Shakir or Curtis Samuel or even Dalton Kincaid. Same thing with Xavier Legette. Like, I choose to believe that it's going to be Deontay Johnson getting 300 targets this year, but Legette could obviously step in. And same with Ricky Pearsall, who I love in Dynasty. That's the one that I don't know about for redraft purposes. It doesn't seem like Ayuk or Debo are going to be traded at this point, but just in case, you take a stab. Maybe they get traded late. Who knows? I love the strategy itself, though. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then your team, Jake, we already discussed, unless you want to go into that even more. But then Mr. Record joining us, his team out of the 11 hole was Gibbs, Garrett Wilson, Malik Neighbors, Trey McBride, Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow, Calvin Ridley, Brian Thomas, Dallas Goedert, Zeke, Khalil Shakir, and Chuba Hubbard. Thoughts on this team, Jake?
Well, I'll say my party line for Malik Neighbors. This is full PPR, which is very important for him in particular because he's a guy who could end up with 200 targets and still 500 yards on the season just because he's going to be double bracketed by defenses on every play because he's the only game in town for New York right now. But in full PPR, hey, a target's a target, a catch is a catch. It's a little early for me. Even Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm starting to have my questions about how early he went, which was pretty early in the second round. I do love both of their potential. I love the upside of both of them, but it does feel like maybe they're going a tad bit early here. I'd be more comfortable if Harrison was in the third, Neighbors was in the fourth, but you're picking nits a little bit at that point. Mm-hmm. Look, we don't have to talk about Joe Mixon. I think we can both just abstain from analyzing the Joe Mixon pick at this point.
The only thing I will say about that, Jake, is end of the fifth round. Some of the other running backs that were around him. I don't hate that pick at that point in the draft, considering the number of running backs that went, because he is one of those few running backs that should get pretty decent volume. So I don't hate it at that point.
Yeah, that's fair. And, he is typically going a little bit higher to your point. It feels like an interesting blend of risk and comfort there. I mean, Garrett Wilson, we've talked about, you're relying on that 40-year-old quarterback coming off of that devastating injury to supply him with that volume. And Calvin Ridley, too. It's like, what is his connection going to be with Will Levis? So there is that little bit of risk there. But obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs, stud, love that pick. Trey McBride in the fourth. There was a part of me that was a little sad he was taken. And then I took Mark Andrews right afterwards. I do think that's the appropriate order for those two, to be fair. So yeah, it's an interesting pick. I personally don't love the idea of doubling up on tight end. I know there's a few teams that did that here. That's just never been my approach. But again, I am a tight end dumbass, so I don't know that that's my place to comment on.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about how you want to construct your roster. So I don't hate it. On Team 12, we know it was an auto pick team, but drafting TJ Hawkinson and then coming back with Luke Musgrave later, I don't hate that because TJ Hawkinson, we haven't heard anything. He may not be starting the season. He may not play until November, December at this point. So to have another tight end that has what could be a relatively safe floor, or at least someone we know is involved in what should be a fairly high-powered offense, I don't hate that strategy.
Yeah, I will say TJ Hawkinson's the one guy that I would consider doing that for, just because, hey, he'll be on your bench for maybe a few weeks, but when he comes back, holy cats. Holy cats is a phrase that people still say, I'm sure. Do we have any that stand out? Looking in the first two rounds in particular, I know we touched on some of these guys as we're going through, but is there anybody that jumps out as just completely out of place in those first two rounds for you?
For me, the only one that there's two that I'm kind of surprised at. One is Devontae Adams going at the end of the first round. Yes. Just with that situation, we talked about it last week with the AFC West. We're just not confident in that team. That one seems a little high, but then also just the draft discrepancy between Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. Nico going at the 211 and Stephon Diggs going at the 3.8. I think typically you're going to see Stephon Diggs go ahead of Nico, or at least they'll be a lot closer in ADP. So to see them, I guess I just assume that Stephon Diggs would be going before Nico Collins in a lot of drafts, just because he has that bigger name recognition, I guess, and the longer history of being really good in the league than Nico.
They should be 5 rounds apart. I'm just going to say it.
Well, I know what you
They should
think,
be 5
but
rounds apart. But yeah, so actually that one though, I mean, when you look at it, it's, I mean, 10, 9 picks, something like that in terms of difference. And it's not like there's a bunch of wide receivers that went between them. There was only a couple of guys,
true.
really Debo and
That's
Waddle
fair.
are the two that went in between. So, and I do think that that's right. Just because I think Debo, I don't know. Debo and Ayuk, that's another interesting one where they're still so close, but they're both going in the top 3 rounds this time. In years past, doesn't it feel like every time we've had this argument about those two, we're debating about the 4th and 5th round selections or 4th and 6th round selections, where it's like, who do you grab out of that? And it's a less of a lose-lose game. With both of them going so early now, it does kind of feel like lose-lose. Do you think that I don't know. Do you think that's a landmine to avoid, or are you comfortable with them there?
I will personally be avoiding them if they're actually going this high come when I'm making my picks in our home league. I would probably be avoiding them if they're that early. I guess I don't know if people are anticipating Purdy making a step forward. And we know this is a relatively high-powered offense and it's very creative. But maybe they're just expecting Purdy to take a bit of a step forward here and being able to support 2 wide receivers, that go in the first 3 rounds. I don't know. It does surprise me.
It is weird. I want to call this out from Scampers, by the way, in the chat. It says maybe we could just do a full team trade. See, he likes my team too, so that's great. Except he's going to keep Cup, and I can keep Evans. That's actually fine because I prefer Evans to Cup, by the way, Scampers. But yeah, with Ayuk and Samuel, I think I'm going to be avoiding both. And again, even with the trade rumors, even if nothing ever comes out of those trade rumors, still, what if we get to before the trade deadline in November, I believe is when it is. It could happen right up until that point. Not saying that it would, but it could. So I don't know. It's very strange to me. I didn't like that. Any just standout late round picks that you want to call out here as well? They don't all have to be from my team, by the way. But they can be.
I mean, your team was just amazing. No, I mean, there's no one that I'm really surprised went, in those last few rounds. Nothing that really stands out except for Tanner Mordecai.
Tanner Mordecai. Well, I want to talk about the guy who went right before Tanner Mordecai, just to gauge your curiosity at this point. Mike Williams, at the back end of round 12. There were various parts in the draft where I thought about taking him. Hey, I was looking at Cortland Sutton. Part of me almost went towards Mike Williams as early as that, which was early in the 10th round. Now, I know his injury history. I get it. Isn't there a slight chance, though, that for those 6 to 10 games you get of Mike Williams with Aaron Rodgers, doesn't it feel like maybe he should actually be drafted higher, or am I reading too much into that?
I think he could go. I think he's being undervalued at this point. If he was there with my last pick in the 12th, that's who I was going to take. Obviously went 2 picks before that, but I do think he is one that, if he ends up clicking with Aaron Rodgers, and again, this all comes down to training camp hype, what we see in the preseason, how involved the reports out of camp are. Maybe he ends up getting a good connection with Rodgers, and with Garrett Wilson kind of being the guy that controls all the defenders, and you have to worry about Breece Hall. Maybe Mike Williams, gets the lesser coverage and he ends up getting more open than we think. And, Rodgers, if he connects with a guy, like, he will throw to him basically no matter what. So this could be a thing.
Yeah. And let me be clear. I'm certainly not saying Mike Williams is better than Garrett Wilson, but I might be more
No.
comfortable drafting Mike Williams in the than I am Garrett Wilson in the second. I think that's just the riskiness of it all. With Wilson, I think I would just, and obviously Garrett Wilson, again, 1,000 times more talented as a football player, but I just feel like there's more risk there. So, I might end up doing that. I might end up chancing that because in the later rounds, that's all good. Anything else you want to call out about this draft before we wrap it up, by the way?
No, I don't think so. I think we did it. We did a good job here.
do.
How about you, Jake? Any last thoughts about the draft?
I hated it. Hated every minute of it. Hope I never do something like that again. That was painful.
Well, you
once
hated
I got
your
past the
draft.
first
You
two
didn't
rounds.
hate all of us. You just didn't hate
No.
all of us in the draft. Just
hated
you.
my draft. Yes, I hated my individual.
Just to be
draft.
clear,
I don't want to recreate that.
No. All right. Well, thank you to everyone that joined us in the draft. Scampers, keeping it real in the chat and drafting at the same time. We appreciate that. Excuse me. Thanks to everyone. I know it was a weird week with Scott Fishbowl kicking off. People are much more invested in that than a redraft mock, but thank you all for doing that. I hope this ADP does help you. Say you're watching this a couple weeks later after the Scott Fishbowl hype has kind of died down. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight of what could be coming come redraft season. It helps steers you to a potential championship, because that's what we're here for.
Yes, sir. What do we got coming up on the docket, by the way? Anything you want to call out here in the next couple of episodes that's coming out?
I wouldn't know. I didn't have the show sheet open tonight since we didn't really need one. So
okay,
I have no clue
do
what's
it.
coming up next week.
I'll say it. It's almost our favorite episodes of the off season. We are getting dangerously close to our bold predictions, our red flags / busts, and most importantly, our drinking buddies, all coming up here in the next few episodes. This is where shit gets real. This is where the rubber hits the road, as they say. So very excited.
We start planting some flags and really establishing guys that we're in and out on, and some fairly reasonable season predictions. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We should actually get the pages started for the show sheet here so we can start filling them in. Because I know you have ideas for drinking buddies. I have ideas for drinking buddies. So we should get that going. I'm excited for it. Good call out there, Jake. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
No. Well, last thing, if you do get any interest in Scott Fishbowl, again, sign up for next year. But also, if you're just very much in the giving mood, you can still be donating to Fantasy Cares. They are amazing about collecting donations for charities. Toys for Tots, if you've never seen their shopping runs that they do around Christmas time with all of the donations and proceeds that come from this, it is going to make your heart grow 3 sizes like the Grinch. It is really an awesome thing. So get out over onto fantasycares.org if you would like to participate in that as well.
Yeah, and with that, folks, give us a rate and review wherever you find your podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube so you can join us live in the chat. We'll answer any of your questions as they come up, especially important in season, since we do tend to stream on Tuesdays here. We will be the first ones in line for your following week start sit questions. So that's what we're here for. Yeah, we'll go live every week. Click the bell, YouTube, watch us, join us. It's a good time here. And until next week, folks, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.